Resume recording there. Good stuff. So we've got the recording going. All right. Week 4. How we doing? Hanging in? Reasonably well? All right. You've made it to the 9 o'clock Friday morning class. So I see that as a good thing, right? This is a success for the week. Okay. All right, I want to take just a moment to look with you at the field experiences page, the assignment and stuff that finally officially went up in Canvas last weekend that I'm hoping you've already taken a look at, but because that is such a big chunk of our course and what all happens in this course, I want to take a second to look at it with you. Well, darn it, I thought I had attached it in this module. Sorry about that. There we go. So field experience log number 1. We'll look at this page here in just a second for what those opportunities are. Again, I'm hoping this makes sense based on what we talked about way back in the first week. So each time you earn your field experience hours, you're going to complete one of these forms. So there's no Dropbox in Canvas for this because it'll all just go into Qualtrics, and then I will pull those forms from there. You probably saw, and you'll see again in a second, you have 4 of these assignments in here. And my goal there is that for every, it gives both of us a check-in point. So it's basically every 3 weeks that you need to have 5 hours done. So on 219, I'm going to check Qualtrics and make sure that you have at least 5 hours worth logged in those Qualtrics forms by 219. If you've got more than 5 done, fantastic. You know, that's great. You're always encouraged to work ahead. But by 219, you should have 5 hours logged into Qualtrics, which will then prompt me to give you 100 on, or presumably 100 on, assuming those logs are done completely, on this assignment within Canvas. And you'll see that grade logged. And then all the other stuff that is here is straight from our syllabus, just reminders for you of where those hours should be coming from, how many you should be counting, and that kind of stuff. And if we get to like the midpoint of the semester and we're having trouble with any of these categories or needing more hours or those kind of things, then we can talk about possibly adjusting the number of hours that are allowed, in particular, the professional development. If we need to allow you to do a few more than 5, I'm willing to talk about that, but let's try to keep it to 5, and then we'll kind of see how that goes. All right. Any questions on what you see on this page before I take you over to the other related page? Any questions here? Not so far. Cool. So if I hit this page that's linked up at the top, so here's a whole bunch of field experience opportunities for you. And I actually got a bunch more like yesterday to help fill in some of these categories. So hopefully this layout makes sense. These are all professional development things that you can look into. These are all band things. And what I got yesterday were some more choir and some more general music to be able to fill out those categories a little bit more. So that hopefully you've got a pretty wide range of stuff to be able to watch, and hopefully won't be too hard to accomplish the variety of settings that the assignment dictates. I think I've mentioned before, if you have other teachers or folks that you know of and you can join their virtual Zoom room, or if you want to consider actually going in person into their class, if you're allowed, and then if you feel safe doing that, those are all things that you are still welcome to do. And you should still fill out the same Qualtrics form for doing those things. So you do not have to only watch videos that I'm providing. Feel free to seek out other opportunities for yourself. But of course, because those opportunities are a little harder to find at this particular point in the world, I tried to provide you and will continue to add as many links here as I possibly can so that hopefully you can get stuff done. And then hopefully this little blurb at the top makes sense. Lots of class periods are at like 45-ish minutes. I'm fine with you rounding that up to an hour. And then particularly with these videos, I had some folks last semester who were so specific of, this was a 17-minute and 32-second video. You know, they were just so specific with their timings on their logs, which I really appreciated their honesty, right? But if you were actually going into classrooms, you would round, you would round that up a little bit. So you are welcome to do that. If it's a 17-minute and 32-second video, give yourself 20 minutes right, for sure on that. That's no problem there. And if you're doing some of the really short ones, feel free to chunk them together, you know, do one field experience log entry where you chunk together multiple short videos. One in particular is Scott Laird down here in Orchestra World. Shared a whole bunch of videos with me, but they're all, you know, 9-ish minutes. So there's one that's 2. So if you want to watch him, and he is an amazing, amazing teacher, but if you want to watch some of his, feel free to clump those together when you're trying to write reflections on them. All right, questions on field experience stuff. Feeling okay? Cool. I'll try to remember to check in throughout the semester and see how that's going. And obviously the Qualtrics forms should also give me an idea of how that's going. But if at any point you're concerned about it or worried about getting enough hours in, please let me know. A gentle reminder that you have to log 20 hours of field experience to be able to pass the class. So we need to make sure that we've given you enough opportunity. I need to make sure I've given you enough opportunities to get those 20 hours logged. So be in touch if you're concerned about that or worried about it. And you should be able to see, but I'll just mention, so the first log is due on 2/19. So I guess that's 2 weeks from today. It was 3 weeks from when I got it up, but 2 weeks from today. And then the next log is on March 12th. So again, about 3 weeks after that, that you need another 5 hours logged. So start working away at those if you would, and be in touch if you've got questions. All right, so now that's enough of me talking. Let's hear some of you talking. I'm hoping you had time to watch the video and maybe skim the blog posts a little bit before today. We finished up class last week talking about the reasons for music in schools and why do we think our job is important, right? And what we provide, why is that important for students? And you all had started to hit on some really great points there. I think let me start us with something a little bit concrete, and apologies to jump right back to sharing my screen, but I'm going to do it anyway. So this was the blog post I had listed first in my kind of priority order for you. Try and make it a little bigger there, where he says, stop defending music education. And I'll share my screen for just a minute here, but then I'm going to turn it off to make sure we can all see each other. So if you want to pull this up on your computer at the same time, feel free. It's listed in our the readings page in week 4. So stop defending music education for lots of reasons. It's a tactical error. If your state gets swept up and your test scores are not doing good, then you're going to get axed. It's sad, like telling Shakespeare is a great idea only because it helps with math class, right? He brings up a lot of stuff in here. I think this is one of my favorite lines. Music is universal. It's a $1 billion industry and it's omnipresent. There's so much music around us. So let me stop skimming through this, and I'll stop sharing my screen. Again, feel free to pull it up on your own screen if you want to there. Did it prompt any thoughts from you? Were there things that he said that resonated with you or that made you feel like, I don't agree with that? Anything that Peter Green prompted from you?
That part we just stopped at where he says music is universal, and that whole paragraph where he's talking about like how do you go about your day ever without music? Probably not, because it's on TV, it's just in your regular life all the time, so why take it out of the schools? That one just really, I was like, oh, that's like literally the top reason. Why take it out of schools if it's in our everyday life?
Yeah. Anybody else as you're frantically skimming down the article, right? I'll just add to Cheyenne's, and I see that as at least two-sided consideration there of one, we are helping to train students to be able to go into that industry, right? We're trying to help students with something that could become their job, and we hope they love it too, but also it's a $1 billion industry, right? It's something they could go into for a career. And then number two, because music is all around us and so omnipresent, many students just want to be part of that. And again, you mentioned a lot of these things last week. Whether students want to go into it for a career or not, music is probably such a big part of their life, they might really appreciate a period a day or whatever that they're able to spend in a music class, and having that be part of their life, whether it's a super formal thing or not, just getting that time to be musical and be surrounded by music. So yeah, I think that's really important. Good. Anybody else? Things from the article that stuck out to you?
So he says, oh my gosh. It says listening to music is profoundly human. It lets us touch and understand some of our most complicated feelings. And I just feel like that's really important because there's not a lot of, like, I guess like in a school setting per se, there's not a lot of things that like really allow kids to do that. And in my opinion, I think that's really super important for kids to be in touch with their emotions when they're developing, because they affect you literally your whole entire life. Um, so I just think that's a really good way to look at it, and like a reason that it's important, because it is.
Yeah, yeah. And I think maybe that was Tyler last week who got us on part of that, the emotional track, right? Of thinking about the way that music helps us with emotions, like expressing them, hearing them, processing them, all the above. Good, good. Yeah, Sarah, I'm glad that stuck out to you. Anything else?
I just like the sentence that says music is freaking magical.
My screen is on that too at the moment as I'm fighting back a sneeze here. Yes, I love it. In 40 years, I've never gotten over it. You take some seemingly random marks on a page, you blow air through a carefully constructed tube, and what comes out the other side is a sound that can convey things that words cannot. And you just blow air through a tube, right? The most simplistic explanation of wind instruments ever, right? But it's great. And then I should have finished, or pull on a string or whack something like that too. Um, but yeah, it's magical. And we all get that. I think that's why we're here, is because we agree with that and that resonates with us. And again, not every one of our students is going to feel like music is freaking magical, right? Particularly at the K-12 level. I'm very fortunate that most of my college students do think music is magical. But when I was teaching high school, there were a lot who did not, right? It was fun. They enjoyed it, but it maybe wasn't their end all be all. But again, all kinds of other reasons why they were in my classes, and why it was still a really positive thing for them. So good. We'll spend just another minute looking at this one. Anything else that jumps out at you?
The paragraph where he talks about in music everyone is a winner, and in sports not everyone is, and that's also another thing. Like, I'm someone who's really competitive, so sports was never a thing for me, because if I lost I was like, nope, I'm not doing this anymore. But in music it didn't really matter. Like, I could just grow and keep progressing in music, and we were all in it together, which is something I really enjoyed. That goes back to like what I said, I think, about ensembles last week, about how the ensemble aspect of it is important.
Yeah. How many of you have watched those YouTube videos of an ensemble that tries to play with about 80% accuracy, and then about 90% accuracy, and then 95, right? And even at 95% accuracy, and if you haven't seen one of those, you should do a YouTube or Google search and see if you can find one of them. Even at like 95% accuracy, it sounds awful, right? Like it gets better each time, but compared to what we know that music should sound like, if you're not playing as a group with, as close to 100% accuracy as possible, the music just doesn't happen. So that team effort, the fact that we all have to be at our very best, because it very directly impacts the overall performance if even one person is not part of the team. And of course, you can make that argument about lots of teams and the ways that they work, but the fact that we are a team, and as Cheyenne pointed out, and Peter does, there's no losers, right? We're all part of that experience together, and we hopefully haven't lost anything through those experiences. Good. Anything else? All right, well, we'll use the last paragraph as kind of a jumping off to the other articles that are blog posts that I pointed you to. And I'll also mention at the bottom, it lists Curmudgecation, which is Peter Green's blog. And you can get a sense of his writing style from this piece, right? And he's written about a whole bunch of aspects of education and music education. And to me is a pretty enjoyable, blogger to read, and posting some thought-provoking stuff about what happens in education. So if you're ever interested in reading a little more of what he thinks, you can go check out Curmudgecation, and see more of what he says. So the last paragraph here: do not defend a music program because it's good for other things. That's like defending kissing because it gives you stronger lip muscles for eating soup neatly. Defend it because music is awesome in ways that no other field is awesome. Defend it because it is music, and that's all the reason it needs. As Emerson wrote, beauty is its own excuse for being. A school without music is less whole, less human, less valuable, less complete. Stand up for music as itself and stop making excuses. And of course, that's the title of the article, right? And the whole point of his thing here is stop defending music education because it increases SAT scores and because it, does all these other things. Defend it because it is music and it is important. So we often refer to that as the aesthetic argument, AESTHETIC, aesthetic argument. And something we talk about the aesthetics of something being the beauty of something, or the inherent beauty and purpose of something. Another phrase you might have heard before is music for music's sake. Right. In fact, did he say that right there? Anyway, music is music, and that's the only reason it needs. So music for music's sake. It's important just because of what it is, not necessarily because of other things that it does. Can you think of what are kind of some pros and cons to these aesthetic arguments for music education? If you're having to talk with your community about why your music program is important, what are some of the pros and cons to using these aesthetic type of arguments?
I think a pro would be because as sucky as it is, telling a group of people, well, music is important because it's important, they're probably not gonna get it like we would. So I think that using those aesthetic arguments is more of an attention getter, unfortunately. So it's like a half pro, half con.
Yeah. I mean, that works. I asked for both, right? Pros and cons. So yeah, but an attention getter, I like that. So you're thinking like it could almost be kind of the start of the conversation, like you're trying to grab their attention with that fact to start, is what you're thinking.
Yeah, my first thought was kind of what Sarah said, that they're not gonna get it like we do. And that would kind of be a con, but I guess something that just came to my mind that you could also an aesthetic part of it is the entertainment aspect of music, how it's important for them as a community to be able to go to live performances and that. And so I guess that could be a part of it as well, part of the argument.
Yeah, yeah, good.
I guess one of the things that would be really good is to talk about how massive the industry is and how important it is for everyone. And you can just ask like, the individuals you're discussing with, like who they listen to on the radio or what concerts they go to, and you can really just say like, if you're cutting a music program, you are limiting opportunities for the next generation to be able to make, this art, and limiting those opportunities is not the best thing for the next generation.
Yeah, yeah. So we're starting to slide a little bit into the next couple blog posts, which is good because that's where we're going to go next. But stay with me for just a second longer on, what the pros and cons of just that aesthetic argument. So and you've started to hit on some of them, but let's see if we can get one or two more of, if I stand up in front of a group of parents and I say music is important because it's music. Music is important because it's a human experience and your students need to experience it and do it and hear it, and they need that opportunity. What am I going to get back? What are some of the pros and cons of me? Let's take Sarah's scenario. If I start with that's the start of my advocacy speech to my parents. What do you think I'm going to get back maybe? I know it's very hypothetical and it can be tough if you haven't had to do that before, which you all have not. But what do you think?
Well, I came from a pretty rural high school. I went to Weld Central. Um, so if you're from Colorado, you know where that is, or you might. Um, but so I guess because I had a large part in helping my band director. She was Our high school was pretty small, so she did both choir and band for us. So I had a pretty big part in helping her direct a lot of things. Like my first time, I directed pit orchestra in my senior year of high school when we did Grease for drama. That was like amazing. But so um, all that to say, I had a little bit more contact with kids' parents than like one might think a junior or a senior would. So having to kind of like it's it's a lot in if a parent really wants to see their kid happy, because chances are if if their kid really likes doing music and they genuinely see that and they're supportive of that, you won't have to make them get it. They'll just get it and they're like, oh yeah, this is great. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. So I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Sarah, but I feel like so on the pro side, for the families who do get it and the families who do see music in this really positive way, you saying that helps them feel like, oh, this teacher also gets it. And this teacher is going to give my student a really awesome experience. And so for those who already have a little bit of buy-in, it gives even more buy-in. It builds even more trust between you and them because you're all on the same page of this is a worthwhile and important thing to do just because of what it is. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. And that's really important because you will get folks in your program who see the value in music just because of what it is. And then when they're able to see that you also value it for all those reasons, that's really important for those students and those families. Good, good. Anything else? What else are you going to get, pros or cons, from possibly parents or administrators that you might be having these conversations with?
Something I thought of is I'm sure a lot of like parents and administrators are going to see it as not as important as we say it is, and they're going to bring up the aspect of cost and budget, and that money can go towards other things like sports that are more important or whatever they deem more important in their school and in their lives and whatever. And I think that would be a hard one to have a conversation with them about, especially administrators. Like with parents, I think it'd be kind of an easier conversation because of what Sarah just said. If it's important to their kids, then it should be important to them. But the administrators are probably going to be a little more difficult to have a conversation with about that, and I'm not sure what I would argue in that case.
Yes, so I think that's probably a good segue for us there, because that is the number one con right there, right? And Tyler, if you have anything else to add on this particular blog post, feel free to jump in before I move us. But the biggest con that you'll get to music is important because it's music are the very practical and logistical concerns that come up that are basically all rooted in finance. Some of them come up as scheduling concerns or, room assignments, like, do we have room for your class in our school, and those type of things. But really that all boils down to money. How many students are enrolled in your class, and are you an expensive teacher to have, or and lots of times we're fortunate that if we have 100 kids in our class, that makes us a very cheap teacher, right? Because we are in charge of 100 kids at a time. In God forbid, right? We don't really want that many at a time, but we could be in charge of that many at a time, as opposed to an English teacher who's going to cap out at about 30, right? So there's all kinds of pros and cons, but they almost all end up rooted in finance and what can we afford as a school and as a community to do and support. And saying music is important because it's music doesn't pay those bills. And it's an important argument. And this is part of why I wanted to start with it, because I hope that you always start from music is important because it's music. It shouldn't need further justification. It just is important because of what it is, and because of how pervasive it is in our society, and because there are students who it speaks to, and all the things we've already talked about. I hope we always start our advocacy from that place, but then recognizing that the audience we're talking to might need more is when we go to the next layer of stuff, right? And as I flip my screen here again, Tyler, if you wanted to say anything else, feel free to chime in. I want to make sure I'm not cutting you off. So this post, and hopefully you noticed, this is from NAFME, right? This is from our national association, the association that should be representing, supporting all of us, okay? And it did originally appear on a different website, but NAFME agreed with it enough, right, to repost it on their own website. And so I'll leave this up here for a couple minutes in case you haven't skimmed it yet. So these are 11, 12, oh, it is up to 20, sorry, 20 reasons, and then I'll stop scrolling here. Why NAFME is saying these are things you could use for advocacy that NAFME is encouraging or supporting. So as you skim over those, I'm curious what you think of that list, particularly with the context that it is published or reshared, right, reposted by our National Association for Music Education. What do you think of this list? And feel free to unmute and chime in if you would like. And in a second, I'll stop sharing my screen and force you to.
So I kind of think that, like, I like that this is less of like, oh, well, it helps in other classes, because, like, obviously we go to school to, like, improve our lives in some way, like learn history or, whatever. But we do all that for, like, excuse me, for a specific reason. So I really like that this list has, like, developmental things that make sense for you to go to school for anyways, if that makes sense, like the auditory skills and like memorization and like stuff like that. I like that it includes stuff like that. Granted, number 10 says better SAT scores, but I'm not necessarily talking about that one. So like, I like that it talks about like stuff that is helpful to the individual as the individual, not in other things.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Sarah. And I'm really glad you bring that up because you're right. Number 10 is the better SAT scores. But other than that, just like you said, it doesn't really say, oh, it makes you better in English class. It makes you better in math class. It is on whole person skills and characteristics and those type of things. That's a really good point. Yeah. Good.
I like that there's a big diversity in all of these. Like each one is something different. Like kids can learn teamwork and learn how to work with other kids, but also they can learn how their like creative minds work and like stuff about themselves individually. And so it's not just about the ensemble or just about learning how to play music or playing music itself. It's like all of these different aspects that can go into the individual to make them overall like a better student and like performer in person in general.
Yeah, good observation. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. So again, feel free to pull it up on your screen if you'd like to, but want to make sure we can all see each other here for a minute. Okay. Good. Anything else that stood out on that list? Those are good observations. The one thing, and I agree very much with the things that you all have brought up. And I do think there are a lot of good things about this list. And perhaps compared to the other list we'll look at here in a second, I think there's a lot that's good in this list about the things that music can help us do and accomplish. I'm really irked that they don't include music is important because it's music, right? Like in this list of, this is the title of the post is 20 important benefits of music in our schools. If it's important benefits of music in our schools, shouldn't we be saying music is important just because it's music, right? And particularly because NAFME reposted it. I wish that was there or that they had added a blurb at the top, that said music is important because it's music, but also consider these things, something like that. So again, I recognize they're reposting it from someone else. It's not entirely NAFME's, but they chose to repost it. And as my national organization, I'd like to see them saying first and foremost that a benefit of music in schools is that it's music for all those reasons we just talked about. But I do think there's a lot that's good in this list. And just as you all said, focusing on things that still are making us good people and part of being part of society and some of those type of things that are really good and important. So Tyler, just want to give you a chance before I go to the next one. Anything to add? No. All right. So then the last one, again, I'll share my screen for just a moment here to remind you of what it was. So 10 reasons why we need music in schools. And I don't know anything about this author or this blog or anything. It was just one that I came across. And you can find a number of these throughout the internet if you care to go searching. So help kids get involved in school, build imagination, improve self-confidence, improve academics. Here's one of these lovely graphs that may or may not fully hold true, right? All right. Expand kids' vocabulary, teaches a variety of cultures, conquer their fears, time for relaxation. You might guess I have some things to say about that one. Children learn teamwork, and then teaches hard work. I don't know if any of you are fans of New Girl, but I loved that episode where where she taught music for a little bit, other than the fact that, she's not a licensed music teacher and whatever else, but it was still a good episode. And she was doing it at a community center, so I really can't argue about it too much. All right, off my soapbox. Thoughts on that blog post and any of the things that are shared there?
I like that it mentioned teaches the students about different cultures because something I have experienced just in general education is in my history classes, like the cultures are kind of not always painted in a nice picture. And in music, we kind of get that always from different cultures when we learn about them. We're like, oh, this is cool. This is really fun to learn about. And really, it can be really pretty sometimes. And like, you can get really excited about it. And so I think that's something that's really cool about this list because I didn't see that mentioned on the other one.
Yeah, yeah, good.
Unrelated at all, but Cheyenne, I'm really enjoying your cat's performance for us.
She won't leave me alone. I don't know why. She just wants to say hi.
Like, you're giving attention somewhere else. How dare you?
Kitty just wants to be part of class. Oh. All right. Anything else from that list that stood out, good or bad? Maybe you can take a stab at why I maybe raised my eyebrows at the, oh, what's the wording they used? Music provides a time for relaxation. Um, any thoughts on any of it?
I don't know about you guys, but I don't have very much time to relax. So,
Yeah. Yeah. um, and it's yet another one that, like, there's pros and cons to it, but I get nervous about it. In my brain, it immediately corresponds with the music is going to be an easy A, right? Like, I just get so nervous about those stereotypes or those precedents that can get set in certain classes. It could be that for a lot of students, the music class is an easy A, that it might kind of be true, but we don't really want that advertised as, a reason to take that class. And I imagine you as teachers don't really want that reputation that you're just going to hand out A's, because then who knows what behavior you're going to get in your classes or what level of engagement you're going to get in your classes. So same kind of thing with relaxation. If kids join music because they assume that every day they're going to get to lay there on the floor for an hour and just listen to music, I think they're going to be disappointed, right? There might be some days where you do lengthy listening exercises, but I also think you're going to make them work, and you're going to make them learn, and you're going to make them have great experiences, but experiences that require a lot of work. And was it number 10, right? That, yeah, music teaches hard work, right? So it's a little rough to put those right kind of back to back of music is a time to relax. And then also music teaches hard work. So for sure, for a lot of students, I hope that music is a time that they find enjoyment and that they might get a little bit of relaxation in one way or another. But I get nervous about, like, advertising that as a primary reason to have music in schools or to encourage kids to take your music classes. So just always with the mindset of words matter, right? And being very careful about what marketing strategy you take for your class, depending on your community and all those kind of things. So, any other thoughts on the ideas on that blog post or any of the blog posts? All right. So all of this, I think these are important things for you to think about and be pondering very practically for this class, because you have to write a philosophy of music education. So some of this will hopefully fuel your philosophy of music education. Why do you think this matters? Why do you think this is going to be an important thing for your future students? And which aspects do you think are important? Do you truly value the team building skills and the fact that it might raise their SAT scores? And that's perfectly fine if some of those things are some of the things that are most important to you. That's your philosophy. Do you think it's most important that music be in schools because it's music? Wherever you land on this very broad spectrum is your philosophy and what you think and what you believe. And thank goodness our philosophies can also change over time. But for this semester, you'll have to put in writing where your philosophy currently is and why you think your class and music in schools are important for students. So I hope some of this can maybe feed into that and help give you some ideas there. And then, as we talked about today, these are very practical things as well that will likely be part of your future as a music teacher, of having these conversations with parents, with students, with administrators, with school boards, things like that. Depending on your community and the context you're teaching in and all that kind of stuff, you may be at a point where you have to justify your program at some time. I hope you never are. I hope you don't ever have to do that. But if you do, having some of these ideas in your back pocket of how am I going to defend what I do and get other people to understand why this is important for our students, and an important thing for them to have in their lives. It never hurts to have, and this word is really kind of driving me nuts lately because of its implications in my own life, but data. It never hurts to have some data to try and back up some of the things that you're doing. And so I encourage you, and I know this is a ways off, but I'm going to try to plant the seed now. I encourage you to keep records of class lists, keep those attendance rosters, or keep an Excel spreadsheet or some other kind of database going where you keep track of how many students have I had each year? How many students took my class, every year that they were in middle school or high school? How many students only took it for 1 year? Monitoring some of those type of things. And if you're able to also track some demographic data, gender and ethnicity and race and some of those kind of things, those can also be helpful statistics to know. I really, you can probably tell by my stammering, I am very frustrated by decisions that get made only because of numbers that can be produced, right? There's a lot more to the story than the data and the numbers behind things. There are people involved in what we do, but we can't deny that numbers and data help to support what we do, or hopefully help us to make the case for why we do what we do is important, how many students we've been able to reach, with any luck, how your program has grown over the years and what your impact has been, and some of those kind of things. So again, that's a ways off for most of you till you actually have your own classroom and can do that, but file that away, that keeping a database of some kind could be something that helps you if you have to have those conversations, and things to keep in mind there. Last note on advocacy stuff, and then if y'all have any questions, to kind of wrap that up. There are a lot of really great resources out there to help with advocacy. NAFME has a whole chunk of the website beyond just that blog post, to try and help you with advocacy if you need it. I know ASTA does as well for string folks. I think CBA does for band folks, and I would bet that ACDA does for choral folks. So if you are ever in a position where you're having to justify, I encourage you to reach out to those professional organizations, because that's part of what they're there for, is to help us make the case for why is this type of program important. So utilize those resources. Even if you're not currently a member of that organization, go ahead and reach out, see what they can do to help you and what they might be able to provide to support you. There are books that have been written on advocacy for music education. There are folks who, like, this is their job to help music teachers save their program. And so there's lots of stuff out there. You just have to dig a little bit to find it, or do some Google searches to find some of it. But just so that you're aware that that stuff is out there if you're ever in that position or need those resources. So last thoughts or questions from you all on why we should have music in schools and advocacy and all those types of things? You don't have to, just giving you a chance. All right. All righty. So from there, oh, I did want to ask, again, I'm hoping you were able to watch the video for today. What did you think of Anita Collins and her TED Talk on the benefits of music education? Anything that you pulled out of that one? I'm not going to play it for you or anything now, but wanted to ask if there was anything you remember, or anything, any quotes you jotted down or anything from that one.
I don't have any specifics, but I really enjoyed all of the things she had to say and thought she was really interesting to listen to. And it was one of the only TED Talks that I've watched and not really gotten kind of lost in side thought from whatever. I was engaged in just being yeah, okay, yeah, that's so right.
Good. I'm so glad it spoke to you. I really like watching her too. I think she presents in a very clear and engaging way. And of course, she's speaking our language, right? She's speaking about something that very clearly applies to us. So that helps me be engaged too. But she does such a good job of explaining the neurological side of things too, right? And why this is, it is important for, that's another aspect I guess we didn't really hit on today, but our brains and the way that we develop as people to have music in our lives. And I could be stealing things from other people here. I don't know. Anybody else have anything about the video that stood out to you? Not for now, anyway, it looks like. Okay. If you didn't have a chance to watch it before class, I hope that you go back and do watch it. I know it's 17 minutes. It's a little bit on the long side, but hopefully Cheyenne and I just gave a nice commercial that it is engaging, right? It's a worthwhile 17 minutes to watch, just kind of a fun video and get some good ideas for why we're important as well. All righty. So I think, yeah, that was the end of what I wanted us to cover for today. I had like 2 things I wanted you to review before class next week. Oh, I did get them up. Okay, good. I meant to check that before class and then started to doubt myself. So if you head to the week 5 overview, which will pop up on your to-do list Monday morning, but if you want to go ahead and look at it over the weekend, of course, go for it. It's up, it's published and ready for you. So next week in class, we're going to start talking about the history of our music ed origins and some of the, methodologies and teaching strategies that have kind of shaped music education over time. And so there are a few videos posted that are fairly short, and there's one that's like 9 minutes, and you don't have to watch all of it. Just watch enough. And I say this in the assignment, some are long-ish, so you don't have to watch the entire thing. Please watch enough to get a sense of the approach or technique. When you come to class, you should be able to make an educated guess about some of the fundamentals of each method. So there's 3 methods posted for you for next week. So come to class with some idea of what goes into Kodai and what goes into Orff and what goes into Suzuki. And if you've never heard those words before, don't worry, that's where we're going next week, okay? So if you check out that week 5 module for next week and make sure you write your reflection on today, and then be working on field experience stuff. So anybody have questions as we wrap up? Nope. Cool. If anything else is going on, feel free to hang out for a minute and we can chat. Otherwise, have a good weekend. I hope you all can get a little rest. Good to see you.